Well, welcome everybody. So we've got, again, this year, Enrichment is covering as broad a number of topics as possible. And I don't think we've done this for a long, long time, but how about just let's get an idea and an update on what's going on in Winnetka. And who better than that? We have Kirk Albinson right here. Very nice to take his time early Sunday to come as a village council member. And we're not going to say this is a nonpartisan. It's not a debate. He's not running for office. So we're just talking about what we want to talk about. I said, Kirk, give us whatever you want to give us an update. And I thought, actually Q&A should take, like a lot of our topics, we've got more than 60 minutes of ideas and questions to get the view from village council on. So I can tell you, here he is, Kirk Albinson, current trustee of the village of Winnetka, who comes from a background in real estate development and investment. He's been serving the village now for 2 years as the trustee. Previously served on the Winnetka Design Review Board, which I guess some of you guys are familiar with. Before that, the board of Wayside Cross Ministries and the chairman of the Sugar Grove Economic Development Corporation for 8 years. Is that right? Okay. So this is an open forum for us because we are interested Winnetkans and neighbors of Winnetka. Kirk, we might not all be residents of the village, but I think people in Kenilworth, Wilmette, Evanston have got some similar, things in common with us. So, yeah, so welcome.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. I guess just to kick things off, maybe this is a little too open-ended, but what is village council like? What's top of the agenda these days that you can share?
I'll answer that. I want to do a little more background for all of you. So you know who I am. I am originally from Minnesota. And when people ask me, I just had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they say, "Where's home to you?" I still say Minnesota, even though I haven't lived there since 1998. And I've been in Illinois for 21 years. We've been in Winnetka for going on 15 years now. We live on Foxdale, just right up the road. Got 3 kids. My youngest is just finishing up new career, so senior new career. So we're trying to soak in every moment of that we can. Tom, I was telling Tom I was like, he's a soccer player and there's 6 more games, and I'm soaking in every moment of that. Absolutely. And I'm gonna miss that. I mean, I'll probably be in tears the last game just because it's the end of that chapter, but as many of you, morning, probably.
We're just getting started. There's another chair over here for you. Couple more. Thank you, Chuck.
So, and just a little bit more about my background and how it relates to council. As Craig mentioned, I'm a developer. By day, I do some real estate testing. My background is in architecture, construction. So it's spent half of my life on the right and on the left, the right and the left. Yeah, on the side of the brain, working in business and design, construction, that sort of thing, which I'm super passionate about, love. And I had close to 12 years on Winnetka's Design Review Board. Number of those years serving as the chair, loved it. Like it was literally my happy place. But actually, Brad, Blaine and I got to serve together for a period of time, which is a lot of fun. And that's still passionate. In fact, I was asked to serve on council, which I'm happy to do, but I was honestly, I love my role on the Design Review Board so much that I was reluctant to move off of that, but they gave me, as they call it, the pressure campaign, because they felt so somebody on council with more of what I call bricks and sticks perspective of the community, in terms of like planning and building and that sort of thing. But someday I hope to go back and serve on the Design Review Board. And I love obsessing on those types of things about how we can, as my father always said, leave the campsite better than you found it. So that's been my sort of mantra and how I approach things.
Nice.
I should have given a deeper bio because there's a lot. I mean, and from the nonprofit side as well, for-profit real estate development, as well as affordable housing. Kirk has been doing a lot of things in the city and the suburbs.
I'm a big mission guy.
Yes.
Say, about the last 15 years or so, I've been focused significantly on affordable housing and attainable housing. In my day job, and a lot of this gets into very complex, large types of developments that you probably hear about, but just the trying to help solve where you have the link between the need for decent housing for people that don't necessarily have the financial means, and then how you equate that to the financial problem solving that goes along with that. So and that's still passionate. Even in my investing work I do today, I'm focused on trying to figure out how can we improve neighborhoods and deliver affordable, safe housing to families in struggling communities. So one thing I'm working on right now in terms of my investing is trying to look at community building with attainable homeownership, affordable homeownership solutions, and it's super challenging, but it's very rewarding. I've actually just this week, fingers crossed, have a young family where the mom is just a longtime employee at Walmart. She makes literally $15 an hour, and if all goes well, hopefully she's going to be an eventual home buyer for her very first house. And coming from generational poverty, it's like it's pretty emotionally amazing just to be able to experience the joy that families have to be able to figure out a pathway where they can actually build wealth, have a home. So those are you could probably see the kind of things that excite me. So now to segue over to the village, it was May of 23, I was sworn in on council. Full disclosure, any questions you have today, I'm speaking to you as a council member. I'm not speaking on behalf of council. So these are all my own opinions or thoughts and perspectives. So we take that in stride, but I'll do my best to at least give you my perspective on how things are going at the village. But I'll just throw it on the table. We've with council, you probably, if you're following, we've had some pretty strong lightning rod topics we've addressed over the last number of years. Whether it be before my time, I had the benefit of coming on board as all the stormwater on the west side was being completed. So hats off to all of the staff and the council at the village, and all the other governing bodies, park districts, school districts, the county forest preserve districts that were involved in making that work. Because a lot of us were affected by all the flooding that happened, a dozen plus years ago, and so that's pretty cool. But I take zero credit and zero involvement in that. But since I've been on the last 2.5 years, we've addressed, some of the hot topics have been the lakefront issues around terms of the use along the lakeshore. We have addressed other things in terms of just concerns about density or lack of density in building and consolidating lots. As you've probably all seen the big house being built on Sheridan Road. We are now just embarking on, which really isn't at the public level yet, but all of the west side stormwater planning and construction issues are now coming to the east side. So we're just starting on the long-term planning, which will eventually lead to all the let's say the reconfiguration of the east side stormwater to help alleviate stormwater flooding issues or concerns on the east side. Some other topics of late, which like literally ongoing right now, just at the last council meetings, was which I would say this is like for me a hot topic right now is we passed an ordinance addressing e-scooters and e-motorbikes.
Thank you.
And we have coming up soon, they're going to be coming back to discuss the e-bicycles. So that's a hot topic. What does it say? So on that one, and if it's all on YouTube, so if you want to go back and watch the video, what was passed? Well, first, and I'm speaking from a layperson's perspective here, so I might be missing over some of the details. But at the state level in the last handful of years, the state passed some regulations regarding e-scooters, e-bikes, that sort of thing. But from what I understand, it was still a bit broad, and just in terms of a lot of local communities, not just Winnetka, have been trying to interpret and then respond to additional concerns about the safety issues regarding those devices, and it's a wide range, so it's hard to. And as I put, we initially felt like we were trying to use a sledgehammer when we should use a scalpel, because you can take a child's e-scooter toy versus, which a lot of us may have seen, kids using what I call e-motos, or their e-dirt bikes. Essentially, they're motocross bikes that have batteries instead of engines, and they can go like 60 miles an hour. And so it's like trying to, address where these are unregulated, devices, for the most part, and trying to figure out how can we maintain safety for the community, and then address, the people in the community, their desire to use these things, or to, whether it's just a kid using a scooter to go to school, or, somebody using a e-motorbike for entertainment. And so what was passed in the last couple of weeks, was at our last session, was that the ordinance right now addresses e-scooters and e-motorbikes or motos. And so, and I'm gonna be glossing over some of the probably fine print here, but e-scooters, essentially, you need to be 18 years old or have a license to be able to operate. Which, and again, my personal, I think that's might be a little severe, but I think there's been a lot of like at the staff level, and then they percolate down to the council, a lot of concerns about safety. And I personally have seen, two young girls on an e-scooter buzzing down the sidewalk next to Hibbard Road on one scooter, but with no helmet, safety, and going to school. It's like thinking about they hit one wrong bump in the road, or the cars back in the driveway. So safety issues with that, but they're not necessarily outlawed. It's just there's a significant minimum requirement to be able to use them. And if for anybody that's been in Chicago, they're very popular in Chicago, and you see a lot of people that commuters that have these beefed up with big wheels and strong motors and that sort of thing. Those aren't necessarily outlawed, but they need to be on the street and operated by somebody with a driver's license.
I feel like if they can go 60 miles an hour, they should not be able to get in the bike lane.
Well, so there's the other thing. So on the flip side, then, there's the e-moto bikes, which are these like literally motocross looking things that have batteries. They look cool and fun, but it's a fan at McDonald's here locally. It seems like there's a gang of kids, they're not even 16, that have these devices, and effectively those are treated like a motorcycle or a car. So they have to be fully registered, even though they're not regulated, but they have to be fully registered and treated just like a motorcycle, to put it simply. And as a result of this initial with the e-motos and the e-scooters, there's been a concerted coordinated effort between the village and the school district, particularly, and now I think from what I understand, the park district might be was following suit to try to understand how they address safety within the parks, but communication and awareness campaigns so families know what the new regulation. Yeah.
I think you did. I heard you just say that they would be treated as motorcycles.
The e-motor.
So that means they have to be in the street.
Have to be on the street, can't be on the sidewalk. And they have to have, license plate, fully registered, gotta be, licensed individual, like insurance, all this stuff. So, and for all due purposes, from what I've learned, a lot of manufacturers basically put pedals on them so they can call them a bicycle, but for all the purposes, they're.
Cycle.
Yeah.
So scooters have to be in the street also.
So that is the other thing. Yes, the scooters have to, and when I couch, I'm just one individual with my own, I'm peppering in some of my own opinions here, but it's like, I think there was a trying to interpret when the police department and the village were working together and working with the village council on how to address this. So number one, at the state level, the state law, I don't know if this applies to e-scooters, but I think it may, but I might be wrong on this, is that at the state level, they prohibit motorized or let's say battery operated devices from being on the sidewalk. So that's sort of like check mark number one. The number two, a lot of the safety issues regarding scooters resulted from scooters being on a sidewalk where there's walkers or, and even in our business districts where you're not supposed to be riding your bike, but kids are buzzing up and down sidewalks and like literally people, whether it's even on the road, people getting out of their cars or on the sidewalks, people coming out of stores. That's where like a lot of the concerns were coming for potential safety issues. So right now from scooters, e-scooters, not be on sidewalks, basically motorized devices are not allowed to be on sidewalks. And so that in a nutshell covers what was just passed. And what I understand is going to be coming back will be some fine tuning on how we address bicycle safety in combination with the e-bicycles. And that I would say, if you go back and encourage you to watch either live the village council meetings or show up or watch the recordings. And even though I don't own an e-bike, this became a little bit of a passion project for me because I felt as though, and I have family members that have them, and there, as I said publicly, there are at least a half dozen states out there that have passed incentives to promote the use of e-bikes. And what I was concerned about is we have this emerging technology where it can really open the doors in terms of sustainable transportation, alternate modes of transportation, reduce our reliance on vehicles, provides access for people that otherwise wouldn't have be a driver. So many benefits with e-bicycles, and then the way I look at it, it's such an emerging technology, like we're at the infancy of where this could go. And I see a lot of families within our community starting to use e-bikes. And I was a strong proponent of splitting out e-bicycle sort of, regulations or ordinance from the e-scooters and e-motos. And so they did pull that out. They're going to be coming back. I don't know. I haven't seen a draft or what it looks like. They should be back soon, but the hope is that it will be taken in combination of some of the additional bike safety regulations or requirements that would hopefully enhance safety within the community. But we'll see. I encourage everyone, if you're Winnetka resident, you have conflict, to stay tuned. And I do know a lot of the local communities do communicate with each other a lot. So this is not something new to the region. Like Highland Park and Glencoe and or what other communities, Deerfield have already started addressing the e-bicycle concerns. And so I know there's other local communities that are looking to Winnetka to help either reinforce or to help set some sort of stage in terms of, like an expectation of what these will mean within our communities. So that I would say that's probably in my mind right now the hottest topic we're addressing. How to answer more questions? Yes.
Well, then I applaud your effort to do something about it. Living in the area of Washburn and Skokie, and just about hitting kids. I mean, it's happened more than once because they're not stopping at the stop signs and they're not wearing helmets and they're just treating it like it's their, going down Berkeley or Cherry or Oak to get to school. And so I'm hoping that the schools are really addressing this about, okay, even if, you're young, that's great. And you have this wonderful electric vehicle, that's how lucky for you. And you now have to take responsibility that when you see a stop sign, stop and look and see with the other cars, because it's dangerous to be, when you're in a vehicle, which has happened to us twice, and you're just about ready to turn left on Berkeley, and boom, and this child is coming with this happy thing going fast.
I agree, and it's part of it's such a new technology. There is, I am unaware of if there's any education or any guidelines that.
So walking my wife's, and a couple of girls went zooming through a stop sign, and my wife said, you know what this is here, right? And she, you know what that's for? I asked you for the car.
It's the kids don't know. I mean, I don't even know if aside from you just unless we logically, but these kids haven't gone through driver training.
No, they need
So it's like,
training, that's for sure.
Mhm.
It's, it's like, what goes through my mind is thinking, like, you read the stories of over 100 years ago when, right, these automobiles came on scene, and it was just like, you look at those old videos of man between horse-drawn carriages and cars, and it was just chaos, right? And it was like, and it was through probably a lot of safety issues, to put it mildly, that, probably, and of course, when the transition happened to all the cars, but it's like, the laws we have today are probably a result of lots of, pain and suffering that was, by our ancestors to be able to get where we're at.
Do you think the parents would play some role here?
Well, I think there was a kid killed in Rolling Meadows just last week or.
That was a big news item, yeah, as well. He was on an e-bike, and I think he went through a stop sign or something of that sort.
Oh, wow.
So,
Tom?
One of the challenges with this is we like our children to ride bicycles rather than having mothers take them to school.
yeah,
And so hopefully that will be taken into account in this new investigation. That,
I hope so.
yeah,
I've made the exact same comment, it's like, my kids, all went to Winnetka and New Trier and, schools, and I spent many a morning riding bikes with them to school, whether it be Greeley down the street here or, over to Skokie and Washburn. And, the generally, and again, this is just me as a community member, like, this technology will never go away. It's only going to improve. The term I use is ubiquitous, and what we're looking at just e-bikes. Right now, it's easy to see, well, there's a beefier frame and it's probably a battery in there. But as time goes on and technology improves, there's a lot of bikes that couldn't even tell it was an e-bike. And so, we're at the infancy of this thing. So it's like, 10, 20, 30 years from now, they're just going to be common. There won't be, I'm guessing there's going to be minimal cost difference. And, it's only the user that really is probably going to be aware of what the difference is. So it's like, we've got to develop not systems to prohibit, but systems to both enhance and promote safety for our
There
use.
could be self-driving also.
You never know.
Bicycles.
Tom, then Flurry?
if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
There's a lot of activities locally and around the country in terms of enforcement of immigration rules. Has the council had any conversations about those activities and how it would affect things that happen in Winnetka?
What do you mean?
Immigration.
Integration?
Immigration.
Immigration.
Ice.
Immigration. Thank you. You know what? It's a good question. When, when the Chicago region, like in the last couple of years, have been experiencing a lot of the, from down south, they were busing immigrants up to the Chicago region. And there's a lot of local area communities that ended up responding to this, because what was happening is there was literally busloads of people being dropped off at 2 a.m. at whatever, a metro station, or just at a grocery store or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we almost had that here in Winnetka, where however the communication works, there was buses coming up, and they were going to be dropped off. I don't know if it was at our Hubbard Wood station. I can't remember but we passed, the village passed an ordinance, and this was in sort of communication via, we have a shared council, legal counsel, that a lot of communities use, same legal counsel. Like, what's the ethical and right way to do this, where we're not necessarily, the goal isn't to prohibit anybody from, come to our community, but it's like, when they're being dropped off in the middle of winter at 2 a.m. and without any winter coats or anything and nowhere to go, it's like, is that really the right thing and the safe thing to do? So we passed an ordinance that, and I'm glossing over a lot of the details, but and a lot of other communities have done something similar, where you have to have a permit to be able to do basically a scheduled drop off, or even an unscheduled drop off. And there was rules about the number of passengers, and basically it was a way to say you can't just drop people off anywhere in our town without coordinating with the community. I'm sure, there's lots of fine print within that. But it was to prevent those situations from happening, whereas if it was scheduled and they had, transportation to either a shelter or somewhere where they could stay, that's a different matter, but, in terms of any other like formal conversations at council level, we haven't necessarily had any discussion or debate regarding immigration per se. About, how do we handle this? I would say at the village level, we aren't, we don't have the capacity, it's just not part of our staffing where we coordinate housing or services.
I'm talking about if I showed up at a restaurant
Right.
or someone's home and
To arrest
detained,
workers.
a worker in a restaurant or in a home. Has council had any conversations about that kind of scenario?
Give me a little, like another more, but.
Yeah, about a whole group, a team of ICE officials.
I'm sorry, Tom, thank you. No, we haven't. We haven't in terms of like how we would respond if at the federal level they sent in ICE agents into our community. We haven't had that discussion publicly, maybe at the staff level.
They have been viewed, a neighbor of mine spotted a vehicle, but of ICE van, and it was when landscapers were around and a caregiver was walking back from his bus. And so the neighbors were all calling each other and saying, do you have anybody keep them inside? And I don't know what Winnetka thinks about that or has any conversations. We certainly have a lot of service workers on our streets.
We haven't informal and even in public forum, we haven't had any discussion about this.
The agenda item for you guys.
Yeah, well, these are important topics to hear about, and I encourage everyone, if you're a Winnetka resident or even other community, make your voice heard. And I wanted, and I'll just, I'm doing a lot of talking here, so I'm not leaving a lot of room for Q&A, but I gotta say, I served many years on the design review board, but that was more of the what I call them, what do we call it, the beauty police drive, or whatever. Because I was like, okay, we were debating about awning colors, in commercial storefronts, but I gotta say, moving over to village council, just as a community member, I have no otherwise public serving experience. It is amazing in terms of the impact that the community's voice has in the direction or the laws that we make as a community. So I encourage all of you, because I've seen it happen where one voice can help shape a policy, an opinion, an ordinance. And it's especially in a small community like Winnetka and a lot of our neighborhood, it's pretty fascinating. Where I always thought, oh, they're never going to listen or they're never going to do anything. They just do what they want or what. But it's like, it takes one concerned resident about a topic that especially when because I really respect and appreciate the diligence that village staff places on the community input. It's just, it's amazing. So I encourage all of you, these sort of topics, and maybe it's already been a discussion, it likely has been at the staff level, it just hasn't come to the public side yet. But I always encourage you to make your voice known because people listen. And I can tell you, the village of Winnetka listens, and it's really wonderful to be in that type of situation or that just living in this type of community where we know our voices are heard.
Can I go back to the development question?
Thank you.
The more prosaic question, something nevertheless the design review board was post office. So it's been in existence forever. It's moving to Lincoln. I mean, the retail center. So it's going to be a big abandoned space, which is essentially been abandoned for almost 20 years since 2003.
Yeah.
And there have been various plans going all the way back to 1910.
Right.
For the improvement plan. What is the Kirk Albinson perspective of what the developer had?
Oh, I love it.
What do you think we should do?
We're recording you, by the way.
Yeah.
Process first.
Well, so, I just walked by, you know, you probably all heard the post office is moving over to Lincoln. right?
20 years ago, we heard that, yes.
Yeah.
Not believe it, but that.
They keep on asking for, you know, moving, believe it or not, moving a, you know, quasi-government type entity into a private commercial space. There's a lot of, that goes into that, more so than just, you know, throwing a counter in. I walked by the other day, peeked in the windows, like, it looks like it's almost ready to go.
Oh.
So like,
Yeah, there's hours up there.
yeah, it's gonna be great when it's
Closed at
there,
lunch.
and when the old place is closed, so, there literally is not a conclusion or a strong opinion from the public perspective of what's gonna happen there, other than that, I mean, me as a customer, we need to do something. You know, I would say, so that part, just in terms of the process, and then I'll tell you my opinion, but the process is starting. You know, first thing is getting the post office moved, which is almost there. And then the next step is gonna be, what is a interim solution for the actual post office itself? From what I understand, the village has done a, what they call a capital needs study or assessment on the building itself. And unfortunately, because the building has so much deferred maintenance, like my initial reaction, I've done historic adaptive reuse, really cool stuff, and I'm like a huge, you know, fan of repurposing our existing infrastructure. But as much as I think, you know, you peel back and restore it could be a really beautiful mid-century gem.
Sure.
There is so much deferred maintenance and other environmental issues within it. So just to even reuse it or continue using it as an occupiable space is significant costs involved with that. That would probably be better, especially if there's not a long-term expectation that we're going to continue using that building. So I would say that was, you know, my initial reaction is, can't we just whatever make it a, you know, whatever pop-up space or some sort of community space, but mechanicals are shot, electricals outdated, you know, there's so much about it that it would cost significant amounts of money just to keep it, the doors open, literally. So that was sort of like nix that. And, you know, there is no, aside from that, it's okay, you mothball it, you can just shutter it and close the doors. And then it turns into a bleak eyesore, especially in the very important part.
We call it Fells West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might as well just keep going.
Yeah. So, and that's where we're at. There is no conclusion right now, but we know that we can't just let this thing sit empty. And so that the village is gonna start like literally in the next number of days, starting an internal sort of study session or evaluation of what's the interim. Like, what do we do with that building or that spot?
Who owns
the building? The village. So the village owns it. The post office had been leasing it for years and, you
Could
know,
you give us a price? What's the loss to the village monetarily when they leave? I heard it's like $200,000 a year.
you know, I don't know. It's a good question.
Because that's a really important issue, because that's like worth, you know, what,
You know, it's raised.
$20 million homes or $10 million homes in tax revenue a year. So that's a not insignificant loss to the village.
I don't know what the numbers are in terms of the lot revenue from the lease. And I don't know how the pre-existing lease was structured in terms of, you know, utilities and all this other stuff. I was, but I do know that the village has budgeted, like for a long time now, the expectation that revenue source will go away. So it's not like we have a gap in our annual operating budget. So in terms of the next step is we're gonna go through an evaluation of what is that interim piece? Like, what do we do with it in the interim? There's no necessarily conclusion other than last year, literally a year ago at this time, the council, we did approve for the village to include in this year's budget the cost to demolish the building. So,
Use it as a parking lot.
well,
Park. Oh, we need parking.
well, so yeah, so there's the interim use, like what is that? We don't even know yet. There's not I think there's many different opinions. There's the like my reaction, okay, I agree, we can't let a building just be mothballed and sit there and become a safety and an issue and an eyesore. And I'm like, okay, we tear it down, throw some sod there, and then, okay, it's a whatever impromptu park, there's, it's been kicked around, well, just pave it. And then at least we got a little more parking in the interim. I would say, I don't know, and collectively, we don't know, there's been no formal direction taken by council, but that's gonna be the next step, and then maybe not necessarily in connection with that, but separately, and this is gonna be a longer term process, is engaging with the community, because the ideas that were thrown out, Chris Rentz was something he wanted to get accomplished before he retired. And there was just too much on the agenda, and so it was just, literally it was like, it was throw together some concepts of what maybe an idea that could be, there wasn't necessarily a conclusion. I think there was like a watercolor of more of an amphitheater or a gathering space, but there wasn't a conclusion on what that should be. That wasn't a design, it was just what is this gonna be? And that would be the next step, and I think there's consensus on the council, is like, this needs to be, this is this is literally like our town square. We need to have a thoughtful, engaged, and community-led process to help identify what we're gonna do there. So I would say, keep in mind, whenever we're talking about the post office, there's the interim, what do we do in the short term, so we can at least not have another building falling apart, right, at the center or. But then let's take the right steps, because it's a community asset. What are we gonna do long term with that site?
What's that piece of property zoned to do? To have on it?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, it's like industrial. I recall from the earlier plans, the 2008 project that Bob Dearborn did.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a really good question.
Because maybe you could put a building like what's gonna be where the Fell Company was, Howard, or. But I do know, and we moved here in 1975, and I was involved with the League of Women Voters, and they had been studying that.
Wow. Only 50 years ago.
So maybe you should use the old studies.
Right.
Starting here, I mean.
Well,
Not smart, actually.
Everybody in the village seemed to be,
Yeah, I feel like I've done like 5 surveys on what do you want for that property,
I have, every 20 years we've done it, so I didn't realize Florida that League of Women Voters did back then. But then around 2005 and 8, Bob Dearborn, I think, led this committee, it's a part of this adjunct to the council to do the entire work and plan was really thoughtful and derived from the current plan. So don't decide to pass, is you guys have to print it up again.
So is there anyone spearheading this?
Yeah, so the staff is, we have scheduled, I can't remember when, but like, it's literally in the next number of days. I think there's gonna be some internal discussion, like laying out what this process is and what the next steps are. But I would be very clear, we're not making decisions on what the permanent future use of this. It's like, what do we do? Okay, post office is gonna be out of the building, instead of throwing plywood on the windows or whatever, just boarding, like, what's that interim process? How do we make that decision? And then there's gonna be, okay, once there's that, then what's the time frame that needs to sit like that, so we have enough time to do the long-term planning?
So who would that person be that you would call?
It would be, likely, at the village, and I might be, hopefully I'm not saying it wrong, but I would guess it's, Scott Mangum, who is our community or our economic development director. And I'm guessing he might be the first primary contact on this, but I can find out and I can let you know, or I'm not sure a way to communicate back. If there's questions I can answer. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an exciting exhibit, a display, a YouTube, something, starting with the ideas that League of Women Voters had in 19. It's a discussion progression of ideas, because there's no reason to start from scratch, because other very eminent groups and individuals have spent a long time on this. Wouldn't that be exciting to sort of look at those and say,
Agreed, 100%.
what works now? What piece,
good point.
is exciting, and all those
Two more
bullet
questions.
points was all filled out with sticky notes over the years. Like, what's those, where, those great ideas that we all have.
This is great, bringing up a lot of new ideas. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's more questions.
Yes, well, here, let me just.
Go ahead,
put it
yeah.
On the post office. Agreed 100%. I mean, going back, like, the town was late master planned by Daniel Burton, right?
You see,
We have that plan and always, which I was unaware of that, so that's really fascinating here. I would say, please stay tuned. It will be, but please, I just want to, from how I understand, and I get concerned as a council member about an interim solution turning into a permanent solution. So I would say, that's my concern. Like, everyone can attest that we need parking. We have a parking issue, especially as we have more and more businesses coming in, like Winnetka, which is another, big topic that's been on the plate of council the last number of years. Once those businesses, I think we're gonna have, they have almost all, or like 80% of the retail committed or retailers. Even though they're providing public parking, that's still gonna add more of a strain in our parking. And I'm like, and I'm just telling you, like, right, it's not a conclusion, but I'm like, well, okay, well, there's been one idea, make the post office a temporary parking lot. But once we get that, it's gonna be hard to take that away.
oh, yeah.
So it's like, even though we need parking, is that the right interim? I don't know.
Underground, put another.
Well, and I would say, just the question was answered, what are the opinions? I've heard great comments about, because we don't have a single intersection in our community that has like a 4-corner intersection with buildings with all 4 corners. We literally don't have that in our community. I'm like, well, that's a great place to add tax revenue, to add density, housing, retail, right? All these things that could be, but then there's other folks who are like, once you lose it or once you give it away, you don't have it anymore. So it's like, that is a open space that could be a public amenity. And it's like, what is the right solution there? I don't know. We're gonna be uncovering that. I want to answer the question. I'll just round out the hot topics in terms of what's on the council. As you all have experienced, this well before my time, the last 10 years, where the council improved the East and West Elm districts. As most of you are probably aware, we're going through the same right now study process for Hubbard Woods District and making all the streetscape improvements, which would be great. That's a significant undertaking because Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT, controls Green Bay Road. And it's very difficult, essentially, where you have a state agency that controls the roadway. It limits our ability to be able to have, if we leave it the way it is, there's some concern about, we really improving Hubbard Woods to make it a truly pedestrian and retail-oriented district while still thinking about it as a thoroughfare for transportation. So
What does it mean controls? They don't control the.
they own, even though it's in the village, IDOT essentially owns the roadway.
State road.
Yeah,
Back to the.
just like an interstate. So there's a thing called a jurisdictional transfer where we can request that the state transfer the responsibility of the road to us. Along with that, then we're responsible for the cost to maintain the road. So there's a cost that will be borne on the village to go through that.
In any sense, they would object to improving the roadway or,
Well, they're not opposed to improvements to the roadway, but it has to follow IDOT standards. So just like simple things like we have in the East and West Elm, where we have these curb bump outs, which help improve pedestrian safety at crosswalks. You can't do that because on an IDOT road, because essentially it changes the use and it turns into a very, so I would say, without going down that rabbit hole, that's going to be an important topic, and hopefully folks that participate, at least in the early, like we had in Hubbard Woods, where you can come in and the post-it note thing, right? What things you like, what things you didn't like. Stay tuned on that. And then I know downstream, eventually we'll be touching Indian Hill area as well. There is also, it's been raised recently about the redevelopment of the Indian Hill parking lot. So that's just been raised. The village owns just a small piece of that. So we're not necessarily in full control of that. It gets very complicated when you start dealing with Union Pacific, Metra, and then other government or private landowners that make up that area.
Most of that parking lot's owned by Union Pacific.
Boy,
That's all right.
no, there's a portion of it. I wouldn't say most of it.
Okay.
But,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like a Swiss cheese.
Really?
Anyway, so that I would, now I want to come back and answer more questions. I'm sorry.
You had one?
Oh, and you have raised your hand a lot.
Alan?
No, I made a comment about a single voice can make a
Okay.
difference, and I just think about the internet, when you get one voice from the lunatic fringe,
Hmm.
you get amplified to the world. And if you get one voice from listening to their better angels, you can hopefully do the same thing, even though it doesn't get as many clicks, but thank you for saying that one voice can do a lot.
Mhm.
Question about East Winnetka Stormwater. Has Strand completed their initial plan or study? And are we moving? Has that been presented to council yet?
So, they have presented updates to council. They have done I think they've completed their initial analysis. And right now they're breaking out into chunks, starting with the most significant area of need, which is down by New Trier High School.
The elder stormwater is that?
Yeah, that's the first area right now where they're literally, like, I think like right now they're having meetings, and I'm not on that subcommittee, but, from what I understand, they have ongoing meetings. They're starting to dialogue with New Trier High School about, we've got flooding issues at the underpass right there on Winnetka Road. And also just conveyance of overflow to either get out to Lake Michigan or which direction it goes. So that's those discussions, just like the west side stormwater was, a layer cake of different agencies that were involved. That discussion has started right now with New Trier because they have a lot of land that could, just like the Duke Childs with the Park District with the underground storm water detention. It's been identified that, the ball field or the fields, the practice fields around New Trier High School would make excellent, underground detention locations. So I'm not, and I don't want to throw this at Brad or you're off, but you're not on the future.
I think it's a great idea.
Those discussions are starting, and they're addressing it area by area, and then from what I understand, they'll come back with a comprehensive concept plan that will then get, sort of nodded for approval to then continue and move into the design phase. Yeah.
Susan?
Yes.
So thanks, this is great. So you mentioned Daniel Durham designed their city, so that's the macro, and the micro is, we've all driven down Sharon Road and seen a very large home that's built and the fluff being taken out and whatnot. So, and I know you want to design and review, and now you want to build a council. I just wonder if you, as a citizen, I want to see more clarity on what's allowed, what's not allowed. I understand the permits are all gone and that house is built. We have a member of our community, our church, that lives just south of there, so, and they pretty much are out of here now, so. What's your thoughts on consolidating lots and digging out bluffs, and how do we manage that as a citizen? How do we help provide?
So both those items, consolidating lots and, the lake shore, I would just keep this general, have been formally addressed by council in the last 2 years, like since I've been on. And as it relates, and again, I'm simplifying here, but as it relates to lot consolidation, as a result of the large house going up at 205 Sheridan, there was concern about, and it's not just that, but I think that's the most extreme example where, people buy up multiple lots and then they consolidate and then you build, if you've got like I live on Foxdale, which is pretty tight lots, somebody started buying up 5 lots and then put this big, house on there and you've got the rest of the neighborhood with these, whatever, 45, 50 foot wide lots. Is that really the right thing to do? And the response from council was no. So we did add to our, the village ordinance addressing lot consolidations. So, and I can't get technical, but there's a whole bunch of math that gets involved with, you can't simply buy up half the houses on the block and consolidate that, build one big house. It has to be in the context of the block of the neighborhood. As it relates to the lakeshore, that's probably the, since my tenure, last 2 years, probably the largest lightning rod topic, and the ordinance that was passed essentially addresses the lakeshore in terms of setbacks and how much you can build within the setback or on the bluff or what they call the slope, steep slope. It's called a steep slope ordinance. I think it's formally. And that's super technical, and Winnetka looked at what the neighboring communities have along the lake shore and how to address that. I would say, the village is being sued by a number of residents because of that, so it's like beyond what's out there right now, not liberty to comment any further about opinions on it, but there is an ordinance that was passed regarding the lake shore use.
Well, except for the last item, I'd just like to comment that we are strongly adhering to the Winnetka progress without change. Over 20, I mean, how the post office has been studied for over 100 years. And nothing has happened.
Is that something?
It's amazing.
Well, I tell you, it's funny because it's like when government gets involved, right, things move at a snail's pace, right? Because a private landowner on that site would probably already be redeveloped, right?
And not parking.
It's, I think part I guess, I'm new to council, but, the feedback there were so many significant topics that council has addressed over the last 10, 12 years. It took all the oxygen out of the room to be able to really thoughtfully, and I'm really quoting Chris Rentz, because that was one of his, he was a long-term, serving publicly here in the community. He really wanted to get that going. And it's like, there literally was no time, because even though council were all volunteers, or it's not, there's no compensation. It's just like what we do as a way to serve the community. At the end of the day, the work falls on the shoulders of staff, and
They only have so many hours.
and it's like they have their day jobs to focus on in terms of whatever it is they do, and it's like these are all sort of not necessarily pie stack, but these are the things that we want to do, and it's like, where do you find it? And especially with these other heavy topics that literally took so much time. I know there was a lot of desire at all levels, both elected and paid positions of the village wanting to have the post office done, but it just hasn't gotten there.
Seems to me we need decisions and not more studies, that's why.
Well,
Not studies, because it's been studied.
Well, yes, I agree, and then, but then I hear, well, somebody wants a parking lot, somebody wants a building, somebody wants a park.
That's not gonna change, right? With
Right.
other studies, not gonna change that.
Yeah.
You need someone to decide.
Yeah, it's, but I would say, I would say, I agree, but then, it's like for me as a, being on the private side, especially being on the affordable real estate development, which is always a lightning rod topic whenever I go into the community. And now serving publicly in my own community, it's like, okay, taking the steps to make sure all voices are heard is important. But yeah, I mean, there is a time for listening, there's a time for action. And by being new, I would say what I've heard is that there really hasn't been a formal process at the village level to understand and to, quantify what the community wants for that site.
So I have a comment about process. I would hope that you would study in depth many of these alternatives, so as opposed to a broad, shallow study.
Right.
Because I think we saw with the stormwater projects to the west that many of those decisions required an enormous amount of detailed design work to make the decisions that were ultimately realized.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing should be done for the post office side.
Right.
Rather than have some pretty drawings and some,
Yeah, can you do it?
popularity contest, we gotta go to, well, what is the exact impact on the future of downtown Winnetka and the village finances? As opposed to what the people want, because what they want might be changed with the actual details that would pursue after some of these decisions were made.
Yeah, good comment.
You're saying we need parameters.
Well, you need detail. A lot of times the devil's in the detail. It's not in the pretty picture, sometimes.
It's like, but they always say, I would like a house in Sharon Road, but I can't afford it, right, or whatever, so it's like, if you ask me which house do I want, or what do I want? Or,
There's a good real example that, when we had the multiple flooding events back, whatever, a dozen plus years ago. I think everyone was, I mean, hundreds of us, right? I fortunately had nominal, like, issues with my part, but it's, hundreds of people had flooding and like, it was devastating. And it's like, again, this is now me going way back in time as a community member. It's like, village just said, okay, we need to just take action and get something done. And then, next thing you know, we had this big, 8-foot wide pipe that was gonna be dug up down Willow Road and down out in Lake Michigan. Now it's sort of like, we just need to do something and sort of, but was that the right thing to do? I think I would argue, what we ended up with, was really the best solution we could have asked for. And so it's like balancing that need to just, resolve something versus the, how you got.
But part of that decision not to do the tunnel costed $1 million for detailed design and have all.
It took time.
Have all of the issues to come out of the woodwork.
Right.
Discussed, so I would say the same thing might be the case with the post office.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like once we do something there, it's gonna be hard, if not impossible, to change direction. So it's like we have to, and I would say, the other thing, and we all probably knows, right? Not everyone's gonna be happy with every decision. How do you make the right decision knowing that
Be fine.
a strong part of your community that's.
Don't need to be.
Regarding the big wetland now on the corner of Hibbert and Willow. If we get really a week of rain, how deep does that get? I was worried about kids. It's an attraction, as the kids get tuned in, they're gonna try and fish in there or whatever. And it looked to me like you could get mirrored in there. And so I guess what I'm getting at is there's always maybe a consequence, particularly when you screw around with Mother Nature. I suppose it happens too with a post office issue. So, you maybe these things that pop up after everything is done, after everything is built, then can't you just deal with it? I mean, I don't want a fence there, but if we had a terrible accident, and has that come up?
I don't know, and because I wasn't involved in that project. Just in terms of the way that whole system's designed, there are stormwater detention vaults underneath Skokie clay fields. Those are designed to fill up, as well as, I think that might be sort of the way it's engineered. The first is to get the water out, and the water that you see at the southwest corner of Willow and Hibbert, the water that's there when it's low, that's that doesn't do anything when there's additional rain. So it's everything above that water level. And that's there's a thing called retention and detention. And keeping it simple, basically it's designed to flood. It's designed to fill up. But and from there it goes downstream and then enters into whatever the other systems that are downstream.
There's a constant there.
But that's the way it is now, and it's designed, from what I understand, like even if there's a drought, it could dry it, but they engineer it so what we have been seeing there, from what I understand generally, this more coming from my experience on the development side, is from there all the way up to whatever the high water mark would be, let's just say it's close to the roadways, designed, that's the area is designed to take a lot of the water that otherwise would be on our streets and the free streets.
Thank you. I hadn't thought it through.
Yeah, so I think hardboiling, I mean, Twitter had a lot to do with that stormwater. It does it with 150 acre feet of water, there's just, they're definitely about 6 feet at most. And there was a discussion around, do you secure it? Is it an issue? Is it a concern? And the net was, well, Lake Michigan's a lot bigger, a lot deeper. So, we're not gonna put fences around all the ponds. The golf course and how they pull that holds a ton of water. And it's very open, very accessible. Yeah, so the discussion was there, the security fence, and the conclusion was, no, the ponds and waterways have been around for
So from your point of view, what can we do to get more people like you to serve on?
Good question.
You came up through a junior board, you have a great deal of interest in this town, and it seems to me like that we need to do more to help people like you serve. And I'm just wondering what you think.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. I would say, I'm going to be humorous, and I know it's being recorded, so it's recorded. I think it's kind of fun. Like I said, I really enjoyed, number one, I wanted to, like, my background's in design and development. And I absolutely love serving design review board, and that's like, I sought that out when I first moved here. I had no desire to leave design review board, but they, Chris ran calls like, we really have a need because the people are rolling off. These are volunteer positions, and they tried to, we've got some attorneys, we've got finance people, and I was, they needed somebody that had sort of that, built environment sort of experience, so we can complement each other on council. I actually resisted. I turned it down. I didn't, and but I'm glad I'm serving. I would say, and this is an issue because we have all these, not just at council, but I think there are over 50 or 60 or somewhere around there of other volunteers within our community that serve, whether it's in fact, Greg serves on the Environmental Forestry and Sustainability Committee, which, and Greg and I have been friends for a long time, and I suggested to Greg because they had an opening, and I know some other folks that have joined in on whether it's the Design Review Board, the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, there's the Historic Preservation Committee that's been rebranded. I'm not sure if I said that right. But I would say it's a huge concern because in the last couple of years, we had a lot of vacancies. And we had an issue now where some of these commissions or committees, which are volunteers in our community, didn't have a quorum, so they couldn't even make decisions on like pressing matters to get, whether it's somebody wanted a zoning relief on a project they're gonna do in their house, all the way to, some other, significant topic affecting the entire community. And we've talked casually amongst council or between individuals saying and I'm going to generalize, we're probably all the older folks in the community here, and it's like we need to, the new folks moving in that are going to be here for many years to come. That just like when I moved here, my youngest was 3, and my kids were going to Greeley, and it's like those are the families we need to start cultivating those community members to now start serving on those lower committees or boards. And that is the best way to really get acclimated the process before moving to council, because you sort of get the process down and you figure out, where you stand and how you run public meetings. But that, I think it's a messaging and a communication, a marketing issue that we, the village needs to embark on, is to encourage more of that participation. Because we saw a couple in the last couple of years where we couldn't find people to serve on these committees or boards, and it was turning into like an issue.
How do you let people know, like you people who move in or have been here a few years, what some of these committees are? I mean, you rattled off that. I've doing like a 39 years, and some of those I don't think I do.
Right.
I mean,
you don't really hear about them. They're kind of
nobody knows.
I would say here's sort of because I've had personally some of those discussions with other council members or staff, like, well, can we just put an ad in the paper? Can we put a news out somewhere? And there is I think, and this isn't recent, but I understand it's been in the past where it's like, hey, anybody wants to just sign up kind of thing. And then next thing you know, you've got there is a little bit of a vetting that should occur.
Nice.
And I think there was some concern in the past when it was sort of like sort of an open call that, then the decision-making started kind of going askew, not necessarily here's what we want, but just sort of sound decision-making or somebody with the right qualifications. So there's a right balance between just, doing an open call, like sign up, like join them, whatever, serve them the services versus, making sure that it's an appropriate
Yeah.
individuals, so
I don't know, I live in Northbrook now, but for 39 years, we lived on West Cherry Street here. And in Northbrook, not only is everything online, that you can look it up, but every other month, you get something in the mail. And they, what's going on in the village, what's going on with, and then this is what, they tell you what things are available, how you can volunteer, be on a board or something.
yeah, great
And,
suggestion.
It's great communication. I mean, I know a lot of people don't read paper stuff anymore, but then you have the other option too.
Right.
Well, we're getting close to church, but Kirk, thank you so much for coming. This is great. I personally feel, I'll say it, inspired, because we know we're kind of a self-selecting, more activists than average residents of the village.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just find young people and through word of mouth say, why don't you get involved? If somebody's got a really strong opinion about something, get involved, do something,
Yeah.
run for something.
And the level below that is the caucus.
That's right. Thank you. The caucus system.
Right, that
Mhm.
really starts there. It's supposed to have 64, they got 41.
Yes.
So that's a gap. That means less representation. Once you're a car, you go, this is how.
Mhm.
Well, my neighbor is spending my money. As the elected trustee.
Mhm.
Which is an important revelation. Most people moving their money.
Exactly.
And it started caucus. So
Thank you for that. That's excellent info.
Yeah. We'll keep spreading the word.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
again, sir. All right.